Here's my story. Be 16, be black, and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out into the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. No, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring the necessities to camp out for a few days. We head to the camp, and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it, and unpack and go down to a little creek for a swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're out camping. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says it's okay. We end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We are all around 15 to 17 years old. We ended up just dicking the day away, so we head back to camp and start pulling out stuff for the campfire, even though both trailers had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits right up against my uncle's, and he wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon, and one of the girls also asks if she can tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark, so they take flashlights and then take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you had had a nosebleed. And it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some sort of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking it down the path towards us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride, they all run right into the trailer, right where the fire is. We all get the fuck out of there, and into the trailers, and they end up calming down. Rooster is even crying. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower. So my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside and get the generator out of the shed in between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no. Lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house, and his father said sure, you can go out camping. But to make sure that we're careful on the way back, and that maybe we should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up, ripped up, and half-eaten, and they assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck around with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff and told his dad that they'd probably be okay without a rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back towards where we were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods towards the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl said that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that they were scaring the fuck out of him, and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling that nasty coppery ozone smell. They then say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest backwards slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, I should have taken the fucking rifle. After they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the woods, and as soon as they started booking it back to the trailer, the girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods and to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could into the trailer. So, we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point that it's just some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. And all of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with some native kid that was trying to tell him about the goatman or some shit. And we probably tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any of that spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking goatman and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now, at the time, I had never heard of this goatman or any of that. But then, a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a minimum for a roommate and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups to terrorize them. It's supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, but it's even bad mojo to even talk about it. Even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going, "The goatman's going to get in and fucking get us." The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's some animal. So all of a sudden, the smell just goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away or lessen. It just literally was there 1 second and then not. So, it's after an hour, making around 9 or 10. We've stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again, and we figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us. So, we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay together another night. And for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 a.m, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories, and as someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what it was about, the smell comes back, and it is so fucking strong. So strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside, and that this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around, and my cousin keeps going on about how it's the goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. So we end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine, and after a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot for another one. And he starts grumbling about how I get 2 brats and everybody else got 1. And I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody got 1 because there were only 12 brats, and if he wants more, he should open up a new pack to cook some more. That's when the girl that had been with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming. "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get the fuck out, get out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room. And then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us, and the trailer doors bang against the side as everybody runs out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks what the fuck is wrong, and I start counting us. There's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around having a good time, you don't sweat the smallest shit, and you don't always keep track of certain stuff. I'm dead sure that someone else had been in that trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. What makes it worse is I couldn't figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other persons, the goat man. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get big-ass sticks and go back to the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. So we were pretty much scared as fuck and huddled together until I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing up her shit. we all want to walk home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kiara, the one that the goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home, and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely don't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. And the only reason I stopped begging them to go was because he went to get a gun. It's around 5:30 p.m. or so when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kiara is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody. And these people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we'd gotten the goddamn goatmen or missed is laughing at me, asking if I had set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them why the fuck I would play like that. So one of the girls goes outside to get Kiara, and she gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kiara starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like someone with their back turned is laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize that there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. So I step out the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer like right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one and put a guy there to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so, and the guy turns to say that she's still there, and there's this huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other 2 are kind of giggling with nervous laughter. And me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. And then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in! Stop playing!" So we go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kiara standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him, and then with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't till he was almost halfway to the trailer that he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open, and when he got to the door, it was locked. He turned it, and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room, and he gets super pale, and he pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then, when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We looked out the window, and there was nobody out there, so we recount everyone, and then basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everybody says 8. I say, well, how many people are here now? They all do a count and then realize that there are only now 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle, and he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was the goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we can all go back to his place, and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified. But at least now I feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. Then, my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's really getting scared and that I'm not funny. And he keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person. And she says, well, how do I know that it wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we get into this huge fucking argument about this, where me and Tanner are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into the fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us. And at worst, something bad is in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying, saying she wants to go right now. And we're trying to tell her that we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while. But we really couldn't get a station there with anything decent, so we turn it off. At about the time Tan's cousin shows up, he was like 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper something to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him, and all around the camp, and then he walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your little buddy at? I figured she would meet up with me at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" He also asked whether we had been camping or cooking blood in the cabin, because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We're all like, fucking nope. But we asked him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He said he had come down the same trail Tan had been using when he had come up on one of you guys' buddies, standing in the middle of the trail looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was look at him. Then she smiled at him and said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her if she was hurt or anything, but if she needed any help, but she had just continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around the bend of the trail, and when he turned back around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods to her trailer. We told him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but then he just sat down and listened on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says that whenever she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him out. So he tried to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. And then he smelled that nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually, it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around, she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back away from her. It was at this point that he asked her if she was okay, and if she wasn't, if she wanted him to carry her the rest of the way back, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance, because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we all know this shit's real, unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can't tell because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge fucking prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed, so I wouldn't shit for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross, blood-like smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up and instantly grab the rifles. There's like half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats or dogs, how their owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing." Hearing that made my nuts fucking creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't even have the right cadence. That's like some shit that I never realized until that moment, but all the people have a certain cadence when they talk. No matter what language, all people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any of that. What, like, it's like one of those fucking YouTube cats. That's what the fuck it sounded like. Like right outside the door. So now I'm in full terror mode. We keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around!" And it just keeps saying "in" or "let me the fuck in" for like 15 minutes. It sounded like I don't just sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around the woods and shit. Every couple of minutes, it'll come back to the door and say something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning, and Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." And he fires 2 more times, and then, from the woods right up against the river across the trailer, it sounds like something slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that before. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear this shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and crawling towards the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much that's how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in a chair, watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He had said that he'd been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed that it was one of us, and he had nodded off. And then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. And there were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the middle of the cabin and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So he just sort of stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak because, from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tam was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys, to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little up the path and he came running up. Basically, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there, and we were too stupid to lock a screenless window. The window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing he had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in amongst us. It walked away with us, all the goddamn way back to his house. And then he said it lagged to the back of the group, looked him dead in the eye, and then walked into the woods.